Good morning. I would like to start off by Alice, can I interrupt you for 1 second? And can you come forward, please?
It's a natural fit.
Our opening congregational song this morning can be found in the pink book, the very familiar pink book, on page 68. The Hammer Song. Please rise and body your spirit as you are willing and able to join in and singing a song that I became familiar with through Peter, Paul, and Mary. Who remembers Peter, Paul, and Mary? Who I got to see at Red Rocks Amphitheater in Denver, outside of Denver, Colorado. I think it might have been my first official concert.
Wow. Good one.
Rock concert. Here we go, Nick. Mick's hitting on the piano today. Hammer of justice. Bell of freedom.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Patton White, and I will be facilitating this morning's Sunday celebration of life. Welcome to the First Existentialist Congregation of Atlanta. We are a spiritual community, philosophically based on existentialist and feminist principles, dedicated to human liberation and the protection of the natural world. We make our spiritual home here in the Old Stone Church, which was hand-built by the members of the African American Antioch East Baptist Church. We acknowledge that racial hostility drove those African Americans from this area, and we honor them and the powerful history of this space. We also acknowledge that in the 1800s, the Muskogee Creek people were driven from this land, and we support justice for all Indigenous people. For our opening words, I will invite you all to, again, rise and body your spirit as you are willing and able. If you would like to stand, please join me. If you would like to remain seated, that is fine too. We're going to do a little qigong to get us started this morning. And we're going to start by bringing down the heavens, taking a qi shower. So reaching out to the sides, gathering energy up, and bringing it down the center of the body towards our lower dantian, our energy center. And as we do this, we can also coordinate our breathing as we inhale and exhale. And one more, inhaling and then exhaling. And then with this next one, if you're standing, you can spread your feet a little bit further apart if you're sitting. Just think of spreading your sits bones apart. But we're going to do what we call shaking the tree, and we're just bouncing and smiling. And this is an instant mood enhancer. If you were coming in this morning and you were bummed out for any reason, or if you were just simply neutral and you want to be a little more upbeat, shaking the tree and smiling while you're doing it will help get your mood lifted. I always like to do this after sitting for about an hour at the computer. And then we can bring that to a close and just close your eyes for a second and scan internally. What are you sensing, feeling, experiencing? It's always an important part of practicing Qigong. It's constantly, in our existential way, checking in with yourself. How are you in this moment? And now we can open our eyes and have a seat. Look around the space, see who's with us today. Make eye contact with some other folks. Smile. Or not. It's your choice. So, if anyone has a community announcement that they would like to share, we have some paper at the back. And we can take the example of all of these community announcements that have just been shared with me, and I will be sharing these in a little bit. So you still have some time to get those up to me. Do we have anyone here who might be here for the first time or second time, haven't been around? Okay, so we have several folks, so let's start over here. If you could let us know what your name is and how you came to be here today.
Hi there, I'm Dave Zenner. I'm a member of Northwestern Unitarian Universalist Congregation, and I am here to listen to the exciting program today.
All right, thank you. Did you say Dave?
Dave.
Dave. Welcome, Dave. And the name we have here?
My name's Ann. I'm here at the station of Jan, who I met yesterday. I work with Amani, Center for Women Refugees, and some of you may have heard Doris speak recently. She's my boss.
All right. And
I'm John. I was invited by.
Ann and John, welcome.
Good to meet you.
And then did I see, yes.
Hey, my name's Peter Bluestone. I'm Bill's neighbor on Benning. I've lived here about 10 years. I used to do a lot of work with CPO in this space on Monday nights. Always wondered what the heck went on here on Sunday. So I finally got around again.
Uh-oh, the word will be out now.
CPO doesn't listen.
All right, anyone else? So, for those who are new, in our bulletin, we do have this little flap here called the connection card, and if you would like to get to know us a little bit more and would like us to get to know you a little bit more, you can fill that out, tear it off, and place it in the collection plate a little bit later. Do we have any birthdays or anniversaries to celebrate today? Jean! Is this a birthday, Dr. Jean?
Yes.
Yay! So please join me and Mick in singing to Dr. Jean. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear This is not beer, I promise. All right, we are now ready for our next congregational song, which is also in our old pink book. On page 3, we shall overcome. Please rise and bow your spirit as you are willing and able. I wear one or two hats around here. I feel like one of those, one-man bands that has another swig of not beer. Anyway, at this time I would like to welcome our fellowship minister, Reverend Marcia Mitchell, forward to share remarks.
Good morning. Man, what a fine looking group we have today. Thank you so much for being here. It's a little hot outside, so we've got a nice and speaking of heat, climate change is real. Maybe you didn't notice that. Climate change is real. And because of that, there's a lot of suffering going on. There's a lot of suffering going on in our country that is affluent, industrialized. People are dying. There are floods. There are droughts. And all across the world, in places that aren't as fortunate as we are, people are suffering. And a lot of that has to do with the climate change, which is due in large part to the kind of pollution and things that are going on because of humankind. I don't know if y'all pay attention to the quotes that Edith puts in the bulletin every Sunday. I hope you will, because she does a very good job, I think, of finding the quotes that are very pertinent. And mean a lot to those of us who come here. The one of the ones that she put today about Carl Sagan. The hard truth seems to be this: we live in a vast and awesome universe in which daily suns are made and worlds destroyed, with humanity clinging to an obscure clod of rock. The significance of our lives and our fragile realm derive from our own wisdom and courage. We are the custodians of life's meaning. We would prefer it to be otherwise, of course, but there is no compelling evidence for a cosmic parent who will care for us and save us from ourselves. It is up to us.
Yeah, that's right.
Please do whatever it is that you feel that you can do to work toward climate justice. It's a very important topic that we need to keep in the forefront of our minds, okay? Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Marcia. All right, it's time for our community announcements. We will start with this next Sunday, July 23rd, from 6:30 to 8:30. Trey Dahl, who has been one of our musicians for our art openings in the past, and Trey will be playing at the Academy Theater, and tickets are available at treydahl.com. So we encourage you, if you want to go experience more of her fabulous music, to go on to treydahl.com and go to the concert next Sunday. If you would like to donate to the bail fund, which is used for the bail for Cop City demonstrators, please write a check to First E and in the subject line, put Social Justice Guild Atlanta Solidarity. Or I'm assuming you can also talk to Libby about that. The Membership Guild is not scheduling food events for third Sundays in July or August. Our next such event will be on Founders Day. Any potlucks between now and then will be announced through the e-blast. Alice asked if she could return to this church. Today, it told me it was something that she wanted to do. So thank you, Alice, for coming back. And thank you so much for your help with lighting our candles this morning. We really appreciate that. Any other community announcements? Ted.
I have a question.
A community question.
No, one of your announcements, Ed, and for the bail fund, could you do it like on the first e-website, and then you can do a PayPal donation?
Yeah.
Okay.
With PayPal donations, just so that you're aware though, PayPal does take a 3% cut of anything that you donate via that portal.
Welcome back, Ted.
All right, so we set aside a time for silence, and you can use this time however you wish. It's about 5 minutes on. We do have candles on either side of the space, but I invite you to be in community and silence with one another. We will now have another congregational song, which is also in the pink book, on page 74. This land is your land. Please rise in body or spirit as you are willing and able. And just to be clear, we're not doing a refrain between each verse, correct? So we will start with the refrain and then go through each verse, not repeating the refrain between each verse.
Thank you for making that
This land is your land, this land is mine. From California to your island, from redwood forest to the
did remind me of something, so I'm gonna do something called Nature Boy.
Yes, yes.
Very strange and gentle. We wandered very far, over land and sea. A little shy, sad eyes were very wide. Was he?
The vocal stylings of Mick and Jean.
Okay.
This morning, we are very fortunate to have with us DeKalb Commissioner Edward Ted Terry. Commissioner Terry serves the Super District 6 of DeKalb County, which includes half of the county with portions of South, Central, and North DeKalb, totaling approximately 350,000 residents. Known for his pragmatic approach and commitment to improving the quality of life for all residents, Ted has dedicated his political career to fostering a more inclusive, prosperous, and sustainable DeKalb County. Before being elected as commissioner, Ted served as the mayor of Clarkston, Georgia, from 2013 to 2020, earning the nickname the Millennial Mayor due to his youthful energy and innovative ideas. During his tenure, Clarkston became a national leader in progressive policy, including raising the minimum wage for city employees, decriminalizing marijuana, and welcoming refugees worldwide. I do want you to pay close attention to what he is wearing today, because was his leadership led to him being featured in season 2 of the Netflix series Queer Eye. Please join me in welcoming Ted Terry.
After that show, I can't go anywhere with someone asking, did Jonathan approve that outfit? Patton, and it's so good to be here. Thank you so much for welcoming me here. I'm so glad that I was here for the whole program because I got some Joan Baez and Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie and it's all the hits. And then also Carl Sagan. I mean, these are like all of my wise masters that I've been following for years and listening to. So thank you all so much for all of that. Thank you to Wade for inviting me, reaching out months ago to really just asking about what's going on in Cop City in the South River Forest and what DeKalb County was doing. And I said, oh, well, we got this whole thing we're working on. Let me tell you more about it. And he just said, well, let's come on down to the church and we'll tell everyone about it at the same time. So good morning to the esteemed members of the First Existentialist Congregation. It's really great to be here. I have been in this room before for MPU meetings, or maybe it was a council meeting. There was something here years ago I attended that was a concert. So it's just it's a great facility, and love being reminded of the history of who built this place and what happened here. Just as y'all have done in your program and your website, I do want to also acknowledge, before we get into talking about environmental justice, our DeKalb Green New Deal, and the responsibilities of our residents to this plan, that I do want to honor the land in which we gather. And just can't say that enough, because DeKalb County, Georgia, just like this area of DeKalb, but all of DeKalb County is located on the ancestral lands of the Muskogee Creek people. And I think all of us here acknowledge their enduring presence and history on this land and this territory. Also, as we honor the indigenous peoples who came before us, we must also face our history of environmental racism head on. This systemic injustice has plagued marginalized communities, particularly African American communities here in DeKalb, leading to health disparities, economic imbalances, and compromised quality of life. As Patton mentioned, I represent from north to south, from Atlanta over to Clarkston. And so I have heard firsthand the struggles that some of our neighbors in South DeKalb are going through on a regular basis, particularly lately when it comes to the Cop City development. And so just within that, I want to reflect on the communities. These are African American residents living alongside the polluted South River watershed, which starts at Entrenchment Creek in the city of Atlanta in an industrialized corridor. Several generations have been born and raised in this area, and that is just one single chapter of a larger narrative of environmental injustice that haunts countless African American individuals and communities in our society. And so today we're going to ground ourselves in those who have been impacted the most by the decisions of our leaders and our government. And understanding these experiences leads us to the profound significance of what the DeKalb Green New Deal really is all about for our county and for our people. And if you've not heard of the Green New Deal before, you may have heard of it at a march or a political speech, or maybe from the opposition that is bent on maligning it as some takeover of some nebulous secret plot. But the Green New Deal is not a political slogan. It's not a one-size-fits-all policy. The Green New Deal is a transformational roadmap. It's a plan. It acknowledges that the urgent need to correct historical injustices while also pivoting our society towards a sustainable future. It was introduced, of course, by Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders at the federal level. And the Green New Deal broadly seeks to address the climate crisis by creating high-paying union jobs, ensuring clean air and water for all, and promoting justice and equity. This vision provides us with an unprecedented opportunity to transition our economy to 100% clean, renewable energy and transportation by the year 2050, while creating millions of jobs in the process. And unlike the New Deal era of reforms and investments, it should not have the underpinnings of racism and sexism that still clouds an otherwise bold progressive leap for our country.
Yes.
To that end, it ensures that at least 40% of the benefits and the investments go to disadvantaged communities, rectifying the environmental injustices that those communities have suffered for too long without proportionate assistance. And let me tell you, in DeKalb County, we're ready to do our part in this historic transformation. Because the Green New Deal is not just some national program. At its core, what it is about empowering local communities to decide what's the best plan and route for them. Because we all have different elements of those environmental injustices, whether it be oil, coal, pollution in our rivers, and suburban sprawl. We all have our own unique environment, but the underpinnings of that injustice are throughout our country and throughout our communities. This is why earlier this year on Earth Day, we launched our DeKalb Green New Deal organizing effort. And I say organizing effort because I can't do it alone. I'm just one commissioner. I represent half the county and overlap with districts 1, 2, 3, and 4. And we've got cities and unincorporated. We've got 7 cities in my district. But at the end of the day, I represent all y'all. All right, this is about what y'all want. This is not about what a politician wants. And as Pat may have mentioned, some of y'all may remember me or have met me before in my previous job as mayor of the city of Clarkston. It's referred to as the most ethnically diverse square mile in America, the Ellis Island of the South. And it really was an incredible privilege and joy to live for over a decade in Clarkston and represent the city for almost 7 years as mayor, because I got a chance to meet Doris and so many other leaders in the community who didn't get recognized on Queer Eye, or the news, or whatever folks think I did. I didn't do anything. I just found and empowered people who were already doing the work and held them up. I really strive to position our city as a safe haven for refugees from around the world. And these are individuals that technically are fleeing persecution and war. That is the literal definition of a United Nations refugee. They're a well-founded fear of persecution based on who they are, where they come from, and their identity. But it does not actually include environmental catastrophe. And that's something that's been debated a lot in recent years. I remember going to my last year as mayor of Clarkston. I got a chance to go to Morocco for the United Nations Refugee and Migration Summit. It was where all the diplomats from around the world representing all of the interested stakeholders that receive and support refugees around the world to acknowledge that right now we have 100 million people who are in refugee, asylum-seeking, or internally displaced status. They have left their homes through no fault of their own, and they're somewhere else in their country, somewhere else in a third country, somewhere else trying to reach a country like ours to seek asylum and some semblance of freedom and protection. But another 100 million individuals and communities around the world could become refugees because of the climate crisis. So think about all the issues at the border, all the issues that are happening out in Ukraine, in Syria, Afghanistan, still to a certain extent in Burma, in China. There are people around the world that are being displaced, and then add on that another 100 million. The sheer size of that mass of humanity cannot be understated, and how disruptive it is for just those communities and those environments, but for world peace, quite frankly. And I do remember several years ago meeting a refugee that came from Syria, and he was a young man. He was with 2 brothers, a sister, mom, dad, and grandma, 3 generations of a Syrian household, fled Aleppo after bombs hit too close to their apartment where they lived. And the father said, "We can't stay here anymore." And they fled to Damascus, Jordan, where they applied to be refugees and were one of the, I think at that year it was about 100,000 refugees out of almost 6 million in Syria. 3 million just living in Jordan. So they basically won the lottery. And they were invited to come to America to be resettled. I met their family, a group of my friends and neighbors sponsored that family. We met them at the airport, Hartsfield-Jackson, at 11:30 at night. They had nothing but the clothes on their back and these giant IOM bags, the International Organization for Migration, that helped assist them gather all their belongings at this crowded apartment complex in the outskirts of Damascus, Jordan, to catch a flight to Paris, to New York, to Atlanta, and finally arrive. And by that time, we had worked with resettlement agencies, set up an apartment in Clarkston, furnished their homes through donations from individuals like yourselves, put a little money in a GoFundMe account, and had a hot meal waiting for them from the Mediterranean restaurant donated from the owner who was helping to support the refugees. And we began to greet them and welcome them into this country. And I didn't really know much about Syria. I mean, I read about it in the news. But I soon learned that what we had read about in the news actually had happened, been going on for almost a decade under the regime. And what the family had told me was that there was one of the worst droughts in recorded Syrian history. About, I think it was around 2007, 2008. It devastated the entire agricultural industry. And what it meant was hundreds of thousands of individuals who made their living off the land now were unemployed. And they had moved into the cities because that's where some semblance of economic opportunity to support their families existed. But what happens when you have hundreds of thousands of individuals who all of a sudden have lost their livelihoods or now are refugees within their own country? Think about New Orleans and after Katrina, the level of disruption for that community and how thousands came to Atlanta and had to restart their lives over. But then take a community that already had a brutal dictatorship, oppressed tribal system, and then that was the beginnings of the Syrian civil war. And I didn't know that. So you're telling me that a climate change-induced drought disrupted an entire economy in one single country, a country, by the way, Syria, that throughout all the issues in the Middle Eastern history had actually been a stable area. Wars in Turkey and Iraq and Iran, the conflicts in Lebanon and Israel, in Egypt, Syria remained a somewhat stable country, but it was the changing of our climate, the disruptions to the land, which had so much power to disrupt politics and economies that had been built over literally centuries. So we have to recognize that the refugee crisis is intertwined with climate change and environmental injustice. And to answer that call, we in Clarkston and are trying to in DeKalb, because we have refugees in greater DeKalb as well, to adopt sustainable policies, to implement strategies to lower our carbon footprint, invest in renewable energy, advocate for local sustainable practices, whether it's like green stormwater or solar-ready roofing. There's all these things that we can do. And really just to work to create not just a physical environment, but a mental environment to welcome refugees, to integrate, to adjust, and contribute to our larger community. And one in particular, that same Syrian community, as they transitioned into becoming new Americans, I met another Syrian who worked at the Refuge Coffee Shop in downtown Clarkston, if you've ever been there. Really good coffee, and hires refugees with a living wage. And there was, and they sort of do like a year sort of kind of workforce training. And we've supported them in recent years to support their barista and mentorship and leadership training that they do for a year for new refugees, with the hope that some of them will be able to kind of grow beyond just serving coffee. Now, some of them actually keep doing the coffee, which is great, but others have gone on to do other things. And this one gentleman, Malik, and I don't mind saying his name because he's been on the news and he's very proud of what he's done. He came from Syria also. And he's had a similar story about the climate impacts to his country and how he came here. But one of the things that he transitioned to was through the Empower Clarkston program, which is an amazing program in Clarkston. It's run by a nonprofit that also teaches refugees to code. But the Empower Clarkston program trains new Americans and any Clarkston resident, quite frankly, who's interested to become HVAC technicians. Okay, an HVAC technician. Okay, that's fancy. What's the practical implications of that? We have thousands and thousands of homes and buildings in DeKalb County that were built decades ago, before there was insulation and double pane windows and floor crawl spaces that are, vapor barrier, right? And literally people who live in huge McMansions with the most current building codes have lower energy footprints than small drafty homes built in the 1950s that to a certain extent are mostly occupied by lower income individuals, fixed income seniors, and African American communities because of the substandard housing that also was built in their neighborhoods. That's a whole other story we'll have to get to next time. And so this HVAC technician program is literally weatherizing homes. We did 20 homes last year, free. It's about it's low-hanging fruit. It's a $2,000 investment. But this one woman who just lives around the corner from here, sort of in between Clarkston and Decatur, she didn't know about the program, but we went door to door and told folks about it, and I think her church actually told her about it as well. And she was just complaining that when she walked in her house, she could feel the air come up the floorboards. And she was not a big house, but it was this moment where this older African American woman who had lived in this neighborhood for years in a home that was built in the 1940s didn't have the money to do some of these improvements, and also was paying a really high energy bill to the point where when it got really hot, it was kind of this thing in her mind where she would say, well, I don't know if I can actually run the AC because I don't know if I can afford it. Or so you crank it up to 85 or something, right? And have a fan going. And of course, we read just on the other day in the news that one of the sort of most acute issues with the climate crisis is people are literally dying of heat stroke. Not just in this country, but around the world. And just the implications of a few weeks ago, we had the hottest recorded day ever in Georgia. And you think that's not getting any better. And so who are the most vulnerable people in our communities? And it was so empowering to me to think about a young Syrian Muslim man who had left his country because of climate change, because of the civil war there, had this opportunity to start his life over in Clarkston, DeKalb County of all places, and then saying, I want to actually help contribute to stopping climate change. Because if we weatherize this woman's home, all of a sudden now she's going to save money on her power bill, right? But she's also using less carbon. She literally is using less electrons from the grid, which, by the way, is still powered by coal and natural gas, right? The lights in this room are about, I think at this point, about 5% powered by solar, right? It used to be 1% a decade ago, so we're making progress. And so we have to do everything we can to tackle this issue from every angle. And as Pat mentioned, I represent from Dunwoody to Ellenwood, here in Atlanta, over to Clarkston, and I really see the importance of deepening our commitment to environmental justice and sustainability. We need to transition to renewable energy. The sun is the best source here in Georgia. We need to invest in green infrastructure. That is so important because mentioning the South River watershed is because of runoff pollution. It's not any necessarily, no one's dumping chemicals in the South River. It literally is wastewater sewage from the DeKalb County sewer system, and it is downstream industrial pollution, sediment pollution from Atlanta all throughout South DeKalb. And we have to ensure the revitalization of these polluted areas because we know, in fact, actually, we just released a few weeks ago a brownfields inventory. So you can literally go on our GIS website right now and look at the hundreds of parcels, little parallelograms all over the map where it is an identified brownfield and is hopefully a candidate to be reclaimed and repurposed or conserved for future generations. So this is the type of revitalization we're talking about. Our journey all here today, really towards a more sustainable future, involves all of us in this room. I call on everyone for a steadfast commitment and an unwavering resolve, because it really does seem sometimes it can be overwhelming when you think about the sheer size and scope of the issue that we read about and hear about. But that's why we're focusing on DeKalb, right? We can't do it by ourselves. With the Green New Deal, we recognize there's a shared wisdom and an interconnectedness of environmental justice and climate justice. And if we can advocate for these policies to prioritize this clean energy, clean water, these sustainable practices, but also engage in dialogue, because there's a lot of individuals out there who, they already have their minds made up, right? Or maybe they've never been interrupted to have that dialogue, or invited into that dialogue. And with that dialogue, at least within sort of adjacent movements, we can build coalitions and understand that our struggle for environmental justice is interwoven with other justice movements. That is so, so crucial. These movements are really broad, they're intersectional, and they're diverse, and they, quite frankly, are the future. I'm only 40 years old, but I've been doing this since I was 17 years old. And I think back over the last 2 decades of activism, and I'm really the most encouraged that I've ever been in these last 2 years, because what I've witnessed in the movement to save the South River Forest and stop Cop City is this powerful intergenerational, multiracial coalition that I didn't even know existed until this convergence of building this massive police training site with burn towers and SWAT villages and bomb disposals and gun ranges and pit maneuver test tracks, clear cutting, scraping the land, and putting something that supposedly is a community center.
Yeah.
But not really.
Yeah.
And then how that mindset of those investments going into something that is really perpetuating the same problem over and over again, coupled with the fact that there's a commitment in Atlanta and DeKalb County to protect the South River Forest. 3,000 acres of forest land between Atlanta and DeKalb are not fully protected. They could be developed tomorrow if the right buyer or the right developer or the right rezone application came forward. And so when the city of Atlanta and DeKalb County begin to swap land or take land that was designated for green space and then completely change the purpose, there has to be some reckoning of that. And what's really interesting about this coalition is that, and to a certain extent, most of the individuals involved aren't directly impacted by it. It's not directly their backyard, right? We're not impacted by anything at the police training site. Right? We're not going to be living next to the firing range or the helicopters. Right? We're not going to be downstream from the South River. The South River is South DeKalb. That river flows through South DeKalb and out to Rockdale. But I've seen individuals and neighbors who care, and they care about their community and they care about their planet. It actually reminds me of a story that I heard a few years ago after the earthquakes in Mexico. There was a small town in central Mexico, and rescuers continued to shift through piles of rubble left by the 7.1 magnitude earthquake. Hundreds of volunteers joined in the rescue effort. One of the most widely reported stories at the time from the earthquake revealed how the people in Mexico were coping with this sudden tragedy. In the first couple of weeks after it struck, media in Mexico and around the world focused on the story of a 12-year-old girl. She was trapped in the rubble of a school building, communicating with rescuers, wiggling her fingers and asking for water. She said her name was Frida Sofia, and she didn't exist at all. That girl did not exist. You see, some psychologists believe that when great tragedies occur, there is a collective need in a community to identify a hero, a cause worth fighting for. You see, it didn't matter if she existed or not. The result was a community that put their hearts and their souls into rescuing one of their own. To work hard and not leave anything to chance. Their people are worth fighting for, their lives. The lives of their people matter. And here in DeKalb County, we have our own hero. The young queer forest offender, Tortuguita, was shot and killed by the state police as he took cover in his tent. And I never knew this young activist. It happened on DeKalb County park land. And therefore, it happened in our community in the truest sense of the public realm. A realm that, as I spoke of earlier, belonged to an ancient people 10,000 years before colonists arrived. An event 200 years after enslaved Africans worked the fields for white nationalists, and a few decades after a city perpetuated Jim Crow through a prison farm labor system. Well into the 1990s. And then they left a once beautiful realm into a forgotten 100 acres of rubble, bullets, and downstream industrial waste runoff for the descendants of those who worked this land for the state, our government here in DeKalb, the state of Georgia, the federal government, all had a hand to play in the systemic oppression, destruction, and now recolonization of this once beautiful land in a continuous timeline. Leaders came and went, but the entity that is and was those governments has been uninterrupted. And in many cases, those same charters and constitutions remain mostly unchanged from these original days of terror wrought on the innocence of these lands. This is why we need a new era of leaders, not ones that are in charge. Under the current systems of power, we have politicians. We elect a leader, and they're going to take care of everything for us. But we need a system that is ever more diverse, interconnected, and distributed. Much like the nature and the ecosystem that we live in, and the peoples of old. And because I know that we appreciate different faiths in this house of worship, in the tradition of the Taoist, there is a verse from the Tao Te Ching that describes what someone should be as a leader. Or as in the Taoist verse, a master. And in the 17th verse, Lao Tzu writes, when the master governs, the people are hardly aware that she exists. Next best is a leader who is loved. Next one is who is feared. The worst is one who is despised. If you don't trust the people, you make them untrustworthy. The master doesn't talk, she acts. When her work is done, the people say, amazing, we did it all by ourselves. Amazing, we did it all by ourselves. So together, let's envision and create the change that we wish to see in our community, in the world. May we bring hope and healing and transformative action as we work towards a more just and sustainable future for all. With the love and hope and deep sense of responsibility, let's march forward as agents of change, tirelessly striving for a world where justice and equity prevail both globally and locally. And if I can, I'll just end with a little bit of a prayer. Thank you all for inviting me here today. I've really enjoyed my time here to have fellowship and worship with you. If you are comfortable, close your eyes, but let us join our hearts and spirits in a moment of reflection and prayer. Breathe in deeply. Center ourselves in this shared sacred space. Spirit of life and love, we gather in gratitude for the blessings of this community and the earth which sustains us. We acknowledge the interconnected web of life of which we are a part and the responsibilities that come with it. We're thankful for the opportunity to learn, grow, and act together in pursuit of justice and equity. As we seek wisdom and guidance, let us remember the struggles and stories of those affected by environmental injustice. Open our hearts to the cries of the earth and all who suffer. Grant us the courage to stand with the marginalized, the strength to address the climate crisis, and the resolve to effect meaningful change. May we embody the principles of our faith, recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every person and respecting the interdependent web of all existence. May we continue to bear witness to suffering, speak truth to power, and act with compassion and justice. Help us create spaces of acceptance to amplify voices silenced by injustice and to build bridges of understanding and love. As we stand at the intersection of environmental justice and climate justice, we pray for guidance on our path towards a sustainable future. May we tread gently on this earth, reducing our footprints, yet expanding our hearts. May the spirit of life inspire us to act in accordance with our deepest values for the sake of our shared home and future generations. As we conclude today, let us carry this commitment into our daily lives, remembering that our actions echo in the vast web of existence. Guided by our principles and empowered by our collective strength, they will be agents of change in our community and the world. In the spirit of our shared faith and with the hopes in our heart, let us say, so may it be. Amen. Thank you again for letting me speak today and joining me in this little reflection of prayer. I look forward to working with all of you as we work on our efforts in the South River Forest and the Stop Cop City, and really the work that is ahead for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted, for your words and inspiration today. A little side note, Clarkston City Council member Laura Hopkins is one of our congregation members. Our closing congregation song takes up that theme of working together. Let's get together on page 114 in our pink song. Please rise and bow to your spirit as you are willing and able. So remain standing for our closing activity, acknowledging that the work of social justice takes lots of energy. We're going to create a chi ball by just bringing our hands together, feeling that sense of energy in between the two hands, and let it circle around. And then let that chi ball begin to float around your body, anywhere that you feel like you need some energy. And then eventually let it all go. And have a wonderful rest of your day today. We invite you to come back next Sunday, and we will be hearing from Reverend Kimball Sorrells and their talk, Responding to Anti-Trans Legislation as Spiritual People and Communities. Thank you all for being with us today. Have a great week.